Since
Around
I think
50
around 50,
candidate,
50 plus participants are there.
59 candidates.
Yes. So we can uh, start. So let others join
Yeah,
in between.
let us
They can
start. Let
join.
us
There is
start.
no problem. Okay.
Exactly, exactly.
Right.
Mhm.
So good afternoon, everybody. Uh, I, in the capacity of the head of the Department of Business Administration, and in the capacity of the convener of this 5 days MDP, uh, I take this opportunity to introduce my colleague and who is the coordinator of this MDP also, Dr. Avik Kumar Mukherjee. Before you, Dr. Avik Kumar Mukherjee, he was a brilliant student and he is a gold medalist from Calcutta University. He secured first class second position in MCOM, and he also secured the highest aggregate marks in MPhil. His areas of teaching and research interest include financial accounting, cost and management accounting, financial management, taxation, portfolio management, entrepreneurship development, etc. He has been an author also. He has written books on financial accounting, corporate accounting, entrepreneurship development, and business ethics. He has also published several research papers in national as well as international journals. He has attended several national and international conferences and workshops. He is also a member of the Indian Accounting Association, and his area on which he'll be delivering a talk is biases affecting financial decision making. So it's my privilege because I have been working with him for the last 6 months, close to 6 7 months, for this MDP. We started way back in, I think, February, in February and early March for this. So, and with these few words, I hand it over to Dr. Mukherjee to start the proceedings. Dr. Mukherjee, please.
Thank you, Professor Tripathi. Now it's nice to get introduced. This is something new to me, to get introduced in your own platform. Thank you for your warm words. Okay,
Thank you.
so first I would like to share my screen and just confirm whether it is visible or not. Is the screen visible now?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, is the PowerPoint screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Professor. Only thing is, can you go to the slideshow mode?
I will have to go it.
Yeah,
I will
yeah.
have to open it. Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
hope it is now fully visible
Yes,
on full
yes,
screen
yes.
mode.
Yeah, it's good. Very good.
Okay, okay. Thank you, thank you. Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues in the department, in the university, uh, some of my students, and most importantly, the faculty members, research scholars who have been very enthusiastic in participating in this FDP uh, on emerging financial management and accounting techniques. I'm really very overwhelmed, and this is something very unique. Over the last 1.5 years, I have been addressing at different platforms, but those over there, I was invited as a guest, as a resource person. But here in your own backyard to act as a resource person, this is equally enthusiastic. I'm feeling enthusiastic. I'm feeling, what should I say, a bit jittery, because this is double role which I will have to take. I will have to complete the session. I will have to ensure that everything goes at par as it has been going since the morning. So with these few words, I begin my deliberation on this very interesting area which is coming up. Now, at the outset, I would like to communicate to all the participants of this FDP that you might find here things which does not fit into conventional finance and accounting study. This has been done intentionally, because if you look at the topic of this FDP, the theme of this FDP, that says emerging financial management and accounting techniques. So we will not discuss anything like accounting standards and all those stuff, because those are discussed now in the classrooms. We as faculty members teach them in the class. So here we always, the organizing committee always wanted to bring in or rather plant new seeds in the minds of the participants, of the faculty members. So here the things, as far as the curriculum goes, as far as the regular teaching pedagogy goes, whatever we will be discussing, they are at a very nascent stage. So I would love to get your feedback from the learned participants over here. There are professor rank, associate professor rank faculty members as well, in addition to assistant professors and lecturers, as well as senior research scholars are there as well. I would love to get feedbacks from you all, and please do feel free to communicate with us. So with this background, I want to introduce this particular topic. This is something which is related to the domain of behavioral finance. Now, over last 1.5 years, when the COVID pandemic created a lockdown is on, thousands, if not lakhs of webinars, conferences, seminars are getting organized across the country by different institutes, big, small, new, old, established organizations, central universities, state-aided universities, colleges, private institute, government institutes, everybody is organizing. And over here, what I have seen that in the field of finance, which is my specialization area, behavioral finance is coming up in a big way. I corroborate that fact with something like, I have seen a number of young researchers who are about to begin their formal doctoral journey are talking about this. Personally, I have received a number of calls from my ex-students or even other interested faculty members or research scholars who future research scholars who say that they want to do something on behavioral finance. And presently, I got to, after doing some study, I understood that behavioral finance as a course is getting introduced in very many institutes across our country, but we, the faculty members who will have to deliver the course, are at a learning stage. Some of us are a few kilometers ahead, some of us are about to start, and some of us have started. So in this situation, I thought that's a basic discussion on behavioral finance. The biases of behavior, which are biases of financial decision making, happen to be a relevant area. Now, within that, I want to focus on a particular type of bias, the cognitive bias. Because if you see the program schedule, the session schedule which has been shared with you all, I have got another session which is on the last day, 5th day, that is on Saturday. There I will be discussing this about the second type, the emotional biases. So today we will focus primarily on the behavioral biases, and if the participants, I would love you all to actively participate in this session and give me some feedbacks and some responses, because I will be having an interactive session. So over here, I would just request you all to at least have one piece of paper and a pen, so that you can jot down a few things, because otherwise at the end of the session you might feel a bit confused. At least when I started studying these concepts at the beginning, some of the things got overlapped. That is something which I would make every effort that doesn't happen to you. So with these few words, I begin my session. Now, because over here all the participants who have been selected and got approved belong to the finance fraternity, accounting and finance fraternity, I can presume that most of you have completed your either masters in finance specialization. That can be MCom in accounting and finance, that can be MBA finance, something of that sort. So every one of us during our masters must have been introduced to a course on security analysis and portfolio management, which we as students or teachers lovingly called as SAPM. So what was the crux of that particular course, the security analysis and portfolio management? What it did with us, it discussed various theories dealing with the scientific approach towards analysis of securities with respect to their risk and return calculations. Then thereafter, the ideas about the different types of securities, which are the possible investment avenues for an investment, for investment purposes. And thereafter, creation of optimum portfolios, which we learned through Markowitz modern portfolio model, Then there were other pricing theories which introduced us towards the domain of portfolio management, which ended with the concepts of portfolio evaluation and portfolio revision. So this, in very few words, was basically the area of study of the course Security Analysis and Portfolio Management. Can I get a response? Is there anybody who has not studied this particular course, SAPM? Just in the chat box, if you can chat, that will be useful for me to follow. So the participants sitting over here, all of you have been introduced to the course on SAPM, yes or no? Just type a yes or a no. Okay, Dr. Ravi has said yes, Sonal Ahuja, yes, Dr. Pintu Sharkar, yes, Animesh Chakraborty, Dr. Rima Prasad. So yes, we can see that most of you have been introduced to this. Okay, let's come back. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Professor.
Now, these theories and these thoughts which have been introduced to us in the course of SAPM now is referred to as standard finance. They come within the ambit of traditional economic and finance theory, and in short, these are referred to as standard finance, which basically stands on the pillars of certain assumptions. As you can see on the screen, basically these are the 4 basic assumptions on which the superstructure of standard finance stands. What are they? All theories basically presume that the individuals, that is the financial market participants, the investors, simply stated, are perfectly rational decision makers. They make rational decisions. Now, mind it, the opposite of rational is not irrational, rather it is emotional. We do not get attached to the decisions. That is what the first presumption was. The first basic presumption is that individuals make rational decisions. They are rational decision makers. And for the purpose of making rational decisions, the investors consider all possible available information, and all these information, after taking them into consideration, are processed, and there is no dearth of processing power on the part of the investor or his or her analyst, etc. So they are capable of rational decision making. They avail all available information are used, and they are processed at the highest order, because they have got unlimited processing power to the available information. And they assign probabilities to each possible outcome. So the outcomes which they suggest happens to be probabilistic in nature. So standing on these pillars of standard finance, we got a theory which happens to be a landmark theory proposed by Eugene Fama, and that led us to the concept of efficient capital markets. So simply stated, what is it? What does it state? The efficient market theory or efficient market hypothesis, what it states is that market has a processing power. Market as a whole processes available information, and depending on the level of information or the quality of information, the market is efficient at different levels. We know that there are 3 levels of efficiency: the weak level, the semi-strong level, and the strong level. A market which processes only publicly available information and that gets reflected in the intrinsic value of its securities is considered to be efficient in the weak form. A market which processes the privately available information as well, that goes to the next 2 levels, that is the semi-strong form and strong form. Within that, so this is basically what efficient capital market theory is. We are not going into that. Now from here, something started. When researchers tried to empirically test this fantastic theory put forward by Eugene Fama called the efficient market theory, they found that some of the propositions were not matching. That is, the empirical observations were not matching with the theoretical propositions. So this led the researchers and the finance experts to question the validity of the assumptions of traditional finance. So they raised certain questions. So these questions were raised by some of the experts in the field, and this gradually led to the development of the discipline of behavioral economics and thereafter behavioral finance. That part of behavioral economics which is applied in the world of finance specifically is behavioral finance, and another small part of it, that is behavioral investment, when that is applied to only investment domain. So behavioral economics is the broader umbrella within which behavioral finance comes, under which behavioral investment and other domains come. So this questioning of the validity or the too simplistic validity of traditional finance basically led us to behavioral finance. Now, what is this behavioral finance? It is nothing but a new discipline, which is relatively new. It has been there for a couple of decades. It is comparatively new as compared to other disciplines of finance or other scientific disciplines, which combines idea of psychology with financial decision making. This is a new domain. So it challenges the assumptions, these 4 assumptions, by stating that they are unrealistic and too theoretical, and explores. So this discipline of behavioral finance makes an effort to explore how individuals and markets actually behave. So what traditional finance suggests is basically normative. It suggests that how an investor or a financial market participant, so as to say, should behave, but that is not how they actually behave. Now that gap existed, and that gap and every effort has been made by the behavioral scientists to explore that gap, and this led to the development of some key themes in behavioral finance. The researchers, the pioneers of this field, they identified that the gap between the normative and the actual, or rather the prescriptive and the empirical, existed because of certain themes. And technically speaking, what are those themes? Heuristics, framing, and biases. So basically, these are the 3 things over which we will spend the next 1.5 hours, or rather 1 hour 15 minutes time. Okay? So those who are new to this area, just note these 3 words: heuristics, framing, and biases. So what are these concepts? Basically, these concepts act as counterpart to standard finance theories. So whereas standard finance theories, it ended by prescribing something, then it brought some disruptions in between. As a result, there are some disruptions in between, as a result of which there is some difference between prescribed behavior or the predicted behavior and the actual behavior. These disruptions in between form the themes of behavioral finance, and they have been identified, and it has been identified that there are 3 themes. What are they? Heuristics, framing, and biases. So from here we move forward. Now, throughout this lecture, I will be giving you some practical situations, some live examples like this, where you will have to opine. I will be continuously keeping an eye on the chat box. Now, everybody just read this. This is a practical situation involving buying mutual funds. Now, say you, me, anybody, when we plan to buy mutual funds, we find that there are a large number of mutual fund schemes available for investment. And as prospective investors, we face a potentially complex task in selecting the mutual fund scheme that would be appropriate for us. Now, to facilitate this process, we choose funds by extrapolating past information of the future. What do we mean by extrapolating past information? That is, we look at the immediate past performances of the mutual funds, of certain mutual funds. We see किसका बेहतर हो रहा है, कौन वाला अच्छा चल रहा है लास्ट कुछ सालों में, and then we decide कहाँ invest करना है. ठीक है? If you agree with this, just comment. Just offer your comments with a yes or a no. Okay, agree. Okay, I find Owen Banerjee saying no. but majority of the responses are yes. Okay, from here we proceed further. So why do we do this? Here, this is done by majority of us. It is not a fault. Basically, we do this and it is done by majority of us. And this is nothing but a shortcut approach to decision making. Why a shortcut approach? Basically, what we do, we see last few years, last few terms में कौन अच्छा कर रहा है, तो वही बेहतर होगा. So what we do, we think that the history will repeat itself. So we take the shortcut and we take our decision and make an investment. This shortcut which we have adopted, which majority of us adopt, is technically referred to as heuristics. Okay? So what is heuristic? So this is our first theme which has been proposed by behavioral finance. So keep it in mind very clearly that between standard finance, prescriptive behavior and the actual behavior, there are some disruptions, and these form the themes. The first such disruption identified is heuristics. So what are heuristics? Heuristics are mental shortcuts which enable a decision maker to focus on one aspect of a complex problem at a time and ignore others. So that is why, because it does not take into consideration all aspects of a complex problem, that is for the purpose of decision making. Decision making is a tough problem solving, because when we need to make decision, when there are more than one alternatives, so we need to basically analyze all the possible alternatives, collect necessary information, process that information properly, and then come to the conclusion. This is a complex process. But at times what do? We end up doing some mental shortcuts, and that mental shortcut is technically referred to as heuristics. These are simple and mostly efficient rules, even though sometimes they are not always giving us the optimal results. So they may result in, because they are simple and shortcuts and do not consider 100% picture, they may lead us to suboptimal decisions. So what are heuristics? These are simple and but efficient rules that individuals apply to help increase. Why do they apply? To increase their speed of decision making and thus forming judgments quickly. They provide rules of thumb to us towards our problem solving. So ये होने से ये करेंगे, ये रहा तो ये होगा. We make certain rules of thumb like this in our brain. It is a decision rule that utilizes a subset of the information set, as I said, that it does not use 100% of the available information, and it relates to making decisions in fast and frugal manner. But why do we do this? Why do decision makers apply heuristics? Again, here comes psychology to provide the explanation. We always want to close any decision, any process which is going in our brain. We are always in a hurry to close, and Indians are expert in that. ठीक है, रास्ते में देखो, कहीं भी देखो, क्लासरूम में देखो, कब खत्म होगा. शुरू करने के लिए भी we run, खत्म करने के लिए भी we run. ठीक है. So why do we do that? The psychologists have provided the answer that brains have a natural need for closure. We can see that in animals. Animals, when they target prey, they always have some bit of patience before they make the killer run. But after that, they run at full speed, as per their capacity, kill the prey, and try to eat the prey to the fullest extent so that their tummy is full. So every species, every living being, basically, or the apart from plants, the brains, the creatures having brains have a natural need for closure. And why do we do that? Because this enables us to make quicker judgments. And it is appropriate for making decisions under uncertainty, because uncertainty is something where we do not know what the possible results are, and we do not know what are the possible probabilities of each results are. So uncertainty is something which we do not like, just like this COVID pandemic. This was last year around this time. We were under tremendous stress. People were suffering from depression because of the uncertain situation. Okay? So we apply heuristics. Human beings apply heuristics to because they find it appropriate for making decision in an uncertain situation. And this helps avoid, in some cases, avoid the phenomena of paralysis by analysis. Sometimes the analysis can be so lengthy, so complex, so tiresome that analysis kabhi khatam hi nahi hota hai. So as a result, we may not reach our conclusion, or we may not reach a decision if we keep on analyzing. It is at that point of time then when such rules of thumb or such mental shortcuts, that is technically called heuristics, are applied. So this is something which has been empirically found to be applied by individuals for decision making in every field, and investment or financial area is also not an exception to it. Now, what are the different types of heuristics? Again, researchers, not the finance researchers, not the accounting researchers, the psychology researchers of the field of psychology have identified these 4 common types of heuristics. What are they? The names are representative heuristics, availability heuristic, anchoring heuristic, and affect heuristic. Now, just by reading, it is not easy to digest what each of them say. Now, to understand this, let us understand again, come to few practical situations. Now, everybody take your time and go through it. Now, say you come across a person during your regular commute to office, as you met a particular person whenever you travel to your office by say shared cab, by bus, by train, whatever it may be. You come across somebody who is by nature shy and withdrawn, with little interest in people around him, and he looks tidy and well ordered and structured. Now, if, because he doesn't mingle much, you try to guess his profession. Now, which profession is this individual likely to practice? This is the question which crops in your mind. And these are the possible options. Say I give you salesman, farmer, airline pilot, physician, or librarian. Now, just give me the response, what it can be. I'm looking at the chat box. Satyajit Kumar has written. I'm showing the screen again. Salesman, farmer, airline pilot, physician, librarian. I have received the first response, first few responses as a librarian, then as physician, librarian, salesman, airline pilot, librarian, pilot, librarian, cannot associate. Okay, pilot, salesman, airline pilot. Okay, so majority of you who are guessing something, definitely there is some base in your mind on the basis of which you are guessing this. Definitely you know somebody who is a bit shy, who is withdrawn, who is smart enough, tidy, ordered, and structured in his appearance and in his movements. And that person happens to be amongst any of these. None of you said a farmer because you could not relate to it. But you have in your mental frame, you know somebody with these features, and accordingly you are coming out with this. Now, most common response when such a test was conducted by the researchers was that of a librarian. Why? Because usually the librarians whom we used to see in the physical library format used to have these features. Now, why do we do so? Because हम लोगों के मन में हर चीज का एक मॉडल फॉर्म हो जाता है, ठीक है, and a prototype is formed. And when we come across a new person or a product or any investment having the features of that prototype, we have few prototypes in our mind, we always think and relate the new thing or person with the existing prototypes, and see that the new thing or person relate is a representative of which prototype, and come out with our conclusion. This shortcut which we apply is referred to as representative heuristics. It is a mental shortcut. Heuristics have to be mental shortcuts that is used based on past experiences and beliefs. So from our past experiences of knowing the peoples of different profession, from knowing products, from knowing brands, from knowing players from a particular area. Say, for example, if we find a gymnast coming from the northeastern state, we are very much confident on them. If we find, say, the wrestlers coming from the northern states of Haryana and Punjab, we are confident of their performances. If we see cricketers coming from, or we were rather, now things have changed. We used to see cricketers coming from the metro cities at that point of time. We were quite confident earlier. Now things have changed. I'm saying time and again. So in this way, why these things happen? Because we have a representative prototype from our past experiences and beliefs. And whenever we come across new people or objects or event, we compare to the prototype, that is the representative idea that already exists in our mind, and compare how the new person, object, or situation matches with that prototype. Do a shortcut even without analyzing all the features or gathering information about all the features. We come to the conclusion and give our opinion. So this kind of shortcut, mental shortcut which we apply, has been named as representative heuristics by the psychology experts. Next, we come to a few more practical situations. Just read these 2 bullets. What is it? First, regularly through television, through social media, we find advertisements of products and services getting regularly repeated in various mediums. It is not that, say, for example, during the cricket match, India-England cricket test match, which used to happen, we used to see similar types of advertisements repeated again and again and again after, say, 4 or 5 overs. Definitely, why do the advertisers repeat it? They did not only restrict their advertisements to cricket matches. Had you watched a movie, that must have been repeated. Had you been active on a podcast or a music online music platform, you might have got those advertisements. Why do they do that? Second, products of the bigger and the well-known brands are usually displayed at the eye level. This is an example from a departmental store. I guess all of you have visited departmental store at some point of time, and you will always see the products of the good brands, of the better known brands, are usually displayed at the eye level or just one stack on the stack just below the eye level. Okay? Is it something which happens by chance? The answer is no. There is definitely some reason behind it. There is some research behind it. What is that? Because the psychiatrists or psychologists have again identified a mental shortcut which we apply called the availability heuristics. They say that the products or the services which are advertised more, we in our mind think that we always have a shortcut which our RAM basically thinks that these are available. The things which are kept in the eye level shelf or the shelf below that, they are easily available. We do not have to stretch our hands or use our eyesight or take our eyeballs here and there to search for the product. So the things which are made easily available basically leads to a mental shortcut called availability heuristic. What is it? It is a mental shortcut that facilitates decision making based on information that is widely available or highly publicized and thus easy to recall. So information that comes to our mind at the split of a second, that happens because our memory has been fed with those advertisements, those products. Our visual memory, our audio memory has been fed with those things time and again. We may not watch them, but we see them time and again, maybe in the billboards, maybe in the TV screen, maybe beside our Facebook pages or Instagram pages. So that these situation results in certain events or products that stand out in our minds more than others. This heuristic leads to a specific type of cognitive bias, which we will see later on, called the availability bias. So look, whatever we have discussed right now, one is the representative bias, the other is the availability bias. Both seem very similar, but because both are referring to some point. But where does the difference lie? Availability bias is about particular examples and it makes ease of recall possible. Whereas representative biasness is about stereotypes, is about models, and less about specific examples. That is basically the difference between the availability heuristic and the representative heuristic. Both these heuristics are these are mental shortcuts, these are rules of thumbs which are used by us unconsciously or semi-consciously in our decision making. Now we come to a third situation. Take this practical case. Take a look at the following 8 numbers and guess the product. Just within a split second, just note it down. I will ask you later on. Please stop. Just type the answer. Whatever guesswork you have made. Please type in the chat box. I'm waiting for the responses. I don't want any clear-cut answer. $40,000 plus mobile keypad. Madam, I just said ki type. Just do a mental calculation. I got 40,000 plus 5,700. Okay, I proceed. So look, in one calculation which looks pretty simple, we have got 2 different responses. Thank you for responding. Now look, when the same thing was presented to another group of participants, it was an actual test conducted by the psychologists. Then look what the responses were. The median answer provided in the first case happened to be 512, whereas the median answer provided by over a few thousand participants happened to be something like this. These questions were summed to 2 different groups, whereas the correct answer is 40,000 plus, correct. Now, why does this happen? Because our brain processes the information which gets presented in different ways. Say, for example, when we get the first line, this one, when we get the first line, we start with lower numbers. We multiply 2 into 3, 6, 6 into 4, 24, 24 into 5, 120, 720, maximum into that, into 7 will be close to 5,000, and our brain processing stops. Okay. And in the second case, you start with a 8 into 7, 56, 56 into 6, obviously 300 plus into 5 will be definitely close to 1600. Then into this, it goes up. So we give bigger answers. This is where our brain falters. It does not do entire calculation and attempts a shortcut. So this is also a heuristic identified by the psychiatrists. Now, what we do, why were 2 answers different? They suggested that a different shortcut was used here. There was no representation, there was no available information. Here the shortcut used is each time to arrive at the answer is something called an anchor. When you look at lower numbers, your brain remains focused at a lower figure and you adjust to that and say a lower figure as answer. And when your brain sees bigger figures, it sets that bigger figures in the in its RAM, does some amount of calculation, that mental calculations, but not full shortcut calculation, applying heuristics, and gives a comparatively bigger figure. I'm giving you another example with regard to this, which I'm sure many of you face. I do face. Basically, in Indian history, I remember few dates. Say, for example, I remember 1857, the year of revolt, first war of independence. I remember 1757, the year of Battle of Plassey, when the Britishers came to India. I remember 1526, the Battle of Panipat, when Babur defeated Ibrahim Lodi and the Mughal Empire got established. Now, whenever I hear about a particular date of Indian history, okay, say for example, if somebody says that Aurangzeb died in the year 1705, I always have these 3 anchors in my brain. A 1526 is clearly set, a 1757 is clearly set, or this is clearly set. So I understand, even if I'm not a history buff, that Aurangzeb is much later than Babur, but quite a few decades prior to the Britishers permanently set their foot on Indian soil or stamped their foot permanently on Indian soil. So in this way, we always have something in our mind. This is an example with regard to date. Now, say for example, when somebody, say a Caribbean cricket fan, or say a Kiwi cricket fan, who does not follow Indian cricket regularly, okay, watches the batting average of, say, or a senior Caribbean cricket fan who suddenly bumped into or heard from somebody about the player called Indian cricketer called Virat Kohli. He just gathered how much is his batting average. What he does, he has in his mind the batting average of Sir Isaac Vivian Alexander Richards, of Sachin Tendulkar, and such batting greats. And he compares with those and says and places Virat Kohli and comes to the conclusion how Virat Kohli is as a batsman. We do the same thing with regard to James Anderson. We have a we have a Glenn Magra, we have a, say, Courtney Walsh in our mind. So this is the concept of anchoring, a very smart concept which was introduced by the psychologists. What they said? They said that we apply shortcuts many times in decision making using this concept of anchoring. And what is anchor? They defined it as an arbitrary reference point. We do not know why. For discussing Virat Kohli, I will select Vivian Richards, or somebody might select Don Bradman, or somebody might select Aravinda De Silva, or somebody might select Brian Lara. So why somebody is selected or some date is selected, that is not clear, that is arbitrary. We have a reference point, and that is called the anchor. And we have a tendency to, and why does it happen? Because our brain has a tendency to rely on the first number or the first piece of information as a subjective reference point for making judgments and decisions. And this process is referred to as anchoring. The problem with this heuristic is that individuals often have difficulty in altering or changing their viewpoints when faced with new information. So very frequently, until and unless we get some new information which rocks us to the bottom, a new anchor is not exactly set. Now we can say after Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli will become the anchor for the next generation. When after 20 years, when people compare the budding cricketers of that point of time, the batsmen of that point of time, of the 50s, of the 40s, 2040s, 2050s, they might, some of them might take Virat Kohli as an anchor. But at that point of time, when I will be a senior citizen, perhaps my anchor will remain Sachin Tendulkar. Okay? So by being anchored by some past events, the decision maker incorrectly interprets new information through the lens of the original anchor. So instead of saying incorrectly, I would say the decision which is arrived is suboptimal. It is not always fully incorrect. It is partly correct, partly incorrect, somewhere in between that. So this is the third heuristic called anchoring heuristic, which is applied. Yeah. Okay. Now we come to another practical situation. Just read this, participants, just read this, what it says. Mrs. Ahuja, who got her first promotion within a year of joining her job. So she was a capable employee, must be. So she got her first promotion within a year. She was extremely excited and took a bold decision to book a flat in a posh locality without taking much factors into consideration, or not taking into consideration the loan burden that would fall on her and its effect on her regular disposable income. So many times we find people taking such decisions. I have just given an example of booking a flat. I have seen my students who just after joining or starting a job after a few months, they end up buying an iPhone of the latest model, which honestly I have not yet invested. Okay? So why do people do something like this? Because many times you end up taking a decision based on your emotion. This is a perfect example where Mrs. Ahuja took a decision based on her emotion. Now when emotion, intuition, or gut feeling is taken into consideration to create mental shortcuts which help us in taking decisions, quick decision making, helps us in quick decision making, that mental shortcut is referred to as affect heuristic. And it has been observed that when an individual is in a positive emotional state, he or she perceives an activity as having high rewards and low risk. So जिस दिन मेरा अच्छा चल रहा है, to say in typical Hindi, हम लोग सोचते हैं कि आज तो अच्छा ही होगा. So whenever we come across any decision, we consider it to be having high benefits and lower risk. And when we are down, our emotional state is negative. The same individual perceives that same activity having low benefits and high risks. And this heuristic leads to something called emotional biases. And this is something which I will discuss in my next session, which is on the 5th day of this FDP. So emotional biases, abhi hata ke rakh do. We will not discuss about that. So this discusses basically the four heuristics that we have come across. Now, just in the feedback session, just give me a suggestion or give me a motivation that till now we have discussed the first theme suggested by behavioral finance. Behavioralists, that what heuristics is, the first factor that causes the disruption between traditional finance, that is the prospective behavior, and the actual behavior of the financial market participants. Could I communicate to you all? Okay, thank you. So this brings us to the end. I will be discussing it in 3 parts. The first part ends with this. Now we come to another practical session. Say in the wake of an outbreak of a particular disease X, a pharma company has come out with a vaccine V. The effect of the vaccine is presented in the following 2 ways. Okay? So effect of the vaccine, it is getting presented in front of the drug regulatory authority who are about to give sanction to launch the vaccine or to delay it further. So if the pharma company states sentence 1, that is on being given vaccine Z, probability is that 20% of the people with disease X will survive. That is one option, one way of presenting rather. The other way of presenting is they may state, that is they means the pharma company people may state to the representatives in the regulatory authority that on being given vaccine Z, probability is that 80% of the people with disease X will die. Now, honestly, all of you tell me, does these 2 statements have different effects on your mind or not? Vaccine C लेने से 20% बचेगा, vaccine Z लेने से 80% will expire. Does these have different effects on our mind or not? Yeah, I get it. Yes. So this is something which again has been identified by the researchers as something called framing. That is the way in which the sentences are framed or way in which a situation, a occasion is presented. That is just the old example which we know, whether a glass is half full or half empty, like a story, something like that. That is technically called framing. The way something is framed, where the same alternative has been presented in a gain context or can be presented in a loss context. Here we can see in first context, the effect of vaccine has been presented in a positive frame of mind, that 1/5 of the population will survive. Whereas in the second case, it is presented in a negative sense, but the information is the same. The end result will be the same. But because of this presentation, errors are made by the decision makers. And this leads us to the second theme of which was introduced, or which forms the second pillar of behavioral finance, called framing. What is framing? Framing refers to how individuals react to a particular choice depending on how it is presented. So using this example, I would say, here the decision makers had only one choice, whether to allow vaccine Z to be mass produced and launched in the market and allow vaccinations to be, or the patients to be vaccinated or not. So it was one choice only, but it was framed, one from the gain context, one from the loss context. So framing refers to how individuals react to particular choice depending on how it is presented. So what is a frame? A frame is simply a form or a way used to describe a situation or a problem. So one situation can be presented in two different ways. Now, let us relate it to standard finance and behavioral finance. So framing is suggested by whom? It has been suggested by behavioral finance. It is beyond standard finance. At the beginning, I have explained standard finance is prescriptive. It ends over there. It is based on those four assumptions. It says prescriptive behaviors of the participants, market participants, whereas actual behavior, empirical studies have found they differ, which are technically called market anomalies. In between comes heuristics and framing. So how does frame and standard finance relate? Standard finance basically assumes frame independence, that is describing the same. It says what standard finance presumes is that describing the same context in different ways, that is using different frames, would not affect decision making. Why? This comes from one of the basic assumptions of standard finance. And what is that? A rational decision maker should see through the frame. Those assumptions that he gathers all information, has unlimited processing power, and that the decision maker is rational. These three combined together, we say the standard finance says, the proponents of standard finance would say that the decision maker would see through the frame, and that makes it frame independence. But that is actually not the scenario. We get influenced by the way things are presented to us. Okay? So framing leads to a specific type of cognitive bias called framing bias. We are coming to that. So we use a term called bias. So till now, we have heard about the first two types of themes, the heuristics, the second theme, framing, and now we are about to launch the third theme, biases. So before entering into biases, let us be very clear about the relationship between these three. What are they? The decision makers basically apply heuristics, the mental shortcuts, the rule of thumb in their decision making. Why? Because our brains have a tendency to close things very fast, and they get affected by framing and thus end up committing biases. So I hope it is clear to everybody how heuristics, framing, and biases, the three themes which behavioral finance suggests, are related. So there is a cause-effect relationship, causal relationship. Heuristics and framing cause biases. And I would love to draw your attention to this particular quote by Hersh Shefrin, who has been one of the pioneers in the field of finance, who introduced psychological thinking in financial decision making. In his words, because of their reliance on heuristics, practitioners hold biased beliefs that render them vulnerable to committing errors. So in the words of Shefrin, it is the reliance on heuristics which lead finance practitioners, the investors, the decision makers, in short, the financial market participants, to commit errors. Now we launch on the final and the third theme, that is biases. We have come across this term time and again, biases. Dictionary defines the word bias in a number of ways. First, just have a look. These are statistical. A bias is a statistical sampling error or a testing error caused by systematically favoring some outcome over others. Most of us know this. Those who are aware of research methodology, take a hypothesis testing, we have come across this. That is a bias. Second is, a bias is a preference or an inclination, especially one that inhibits partial judgment. We see that within our family members, within our friends, within our students. Even students are at times biased towards some of their teachers whom they like, who they consider as their role model. So this is a preference, an inclination which may not always lead to impartial judgment. Or third, it is an inclination or a prejudice in favor of a particular viewpoint. You may like a particular player. You may like a particular vacation place. You may like a particular hotel group where you want to stay. Okay? So these kind of mental things end up or make us commit certain errors or mistakes in decision making, or I would say resulting in some suboptimal decision. Focus on these two, this hyphenated word, suboptimal. It is a decision, it is not incorrect, but it is not the best of the decision. That is called a suboptimal decision. Or finally, it can be an inclination or temperament or outlook, especially a personal or sometimes unreasoned judgment. In the context of this discussion, we are considering biases that result in suboptimal financial decisions only because we are finance people. Now, such biases are caused by, the researchers have again found out that these biases in financial decision making are primarily caused by two reasons. First is faulty cognitive reasoning, and such biases which are caused by faulty cognitive reasoning are referred to as cognitive biases, or some of the biases may result from reasoning influenced by emotions, which are simply referred to as emotional biases. So simply, biases can be classified as cognitive biases or emotional biases, and as I have already told you, emotional biases is not our topic of discussion today. We will take up cognitive biases now. So what are cognitive biases? This is a deficiency. A bias is a deficiency, a limitation, a error, a mistake, okay, which happens due to heuristics, which happens due to emotions, which happens due to framing. And within that, which is a cognitive bias, the first type of bias, it is a deficiency or a limitation in how people think. This behavioral mistake occurs while collecting, processing, and interpreting the information. And the causes of cognitive biases are faulty reasoning, lack of understanding the techniques related to assessing investments, inability to correctly process information. Look, again related to the brain, to thinking. So faulty reasoning, understanding the techniques which will be applied for analysis purposes, inability to process the information correctly, and memory errors. So all these are related to brain. Might be brain processing, might be that is gray cell or memory power. Now, every one of us suffer from cognitive biases or have cognitive biases. However, the good news is they can be removed or reduced through awareness, incentives, nudges, and training. This process of removal of reduction or biases is technically called de-biasing. So the reason why behavioral finance, a course on behavioral finance, and within that units on biases should be included or are getting included across the world and in our country as well at financial programs, at programs on finance, is because we should empower our students, the future managers, the future investors, the future analysts, the future financial experts, academicians, researchers, to be aware of the possible pitfalls which we end up committing because of the heuristics, the framing, and the biases. That is, we want our students to be de-biased. We want to make them aware. Now, within cognitive biases, that is the biases related to thinking, to the brain, they have been classified by the experts into two categories. A, belief perseverance bias, and B, information processing bias. And I know for those of you who are listening to these terms for the first time, they might feel a bit heavy. That is why, to help you in the next slides, you will always find reference to these A and B. So cognitive biases are split into two categories: A, belief perseverance bias, and B, information processing bias. Okay? Now, we start with the first type of cognitive bias, belief perseverance bias, A. What is belief perseverance bias? It is the first category of cognitive bias. We know that. It is a psychological phenomena in which people cling to previously held beliefs, even after receiving convincing evidence that reject the basis of that belief. Honestly, I find these things in my real life here and there. Say for example, when some of my senior citizen relatives, say when we asked them to shift to when I personally requested them to shift to smartphones, or when I requested them to shift to online banking, okay, or to use UPI for making payments, or to use wallets for making payments. Achha, I would like to say that those persons have now been convinced and they are using all these. But when I first introduced these things and said that it is happening, they always thought कि इसमें कुछ गड़बड़ होगा ही. उनके दिमाग में ही है कि गड़बड़ होना ही है. Because the news which are flashed in the media, especially in Indian media, to get the TRP, to get our attention, are always the negative news. I hope most of you across the country have this experience. At least I get this experience. So, belief, perseverance, bias. Look at these two words: belief, perseverance. So that bias that helps us to persevere with our existing belief is called belief perseverance bias. So this is something related to our thinking. We do not want to change our thinking. So what happens as a consequence of this bias? We are inclined to accept conclusions that are consistent with our accepted belief system. We do not change the belief system which is cemented in our brain, and reject those that are inconsistent despite their underlying logic and plausibility. So when new pieces of information come which are more logical, more rational, then also our brain do not process that, do not give space to that. And this bias is called belief perseverance bias, because this is a mistake on our part, this is an error on our part. This type of bias stems from the fact that people attempt to avoid conflicts between beliefs and reality. That is, most of us, we always, when we come across, we have heard something called resistance to change, barriers to change. We always, why do we do that? Because we want to avoid conflict between our existing belief and the reality, when the reality is something new. This tendency comes out of the fact that when a person is faced with contrary evidence, her or his brain's defense mechanism filters out the contradictory information, okay, and allows the existing information to persevere, and that belief, the existing belief, survives. That is the belief perseverance bias. I hope it is clear to everybody. Now, we come to the types of belief perseverance bias. Okay? Look, there are 5 types of belief perseverance bias which have been identified by the psychiatrists, the psychologists, through their research work. What are they? Let us forget the names. Let us come to some practical situations. Look, say for example, you hold some shares of ABC Limited, a company which is in the automobile industry for last 40 years. You become aware of a bad news about the company's earnings that contradicts its previous earnings estimates. Like many of its models are outdated. Okay? You come such kind of an information. Say for example, take for example Maruti Udyog. Okay? It's a 40-year-old company. Okay? You hold its shares. Now you come across some information that its new products, new models which are getting launched are not standing to the competition posed by the recent players, the new players in the market. Okay. How will you react? Next, say you bought a pharma company stock anticipating that it would soon get regulatory approval for a new drug. However, there happens a delay in the approval process. The question is, will you immediately, you bought it with a positive anticipation. When it turned out to be negative or it is getting delayed, will you sell the stock immediately? Third, you become aware of a bad news about the company's earnings that contradicts its previous earnings estimates. How would a regular investor, as a regular investor, how would you react? If you are not giving any spontaneous reaction and saying, नहीं, मारुति उद्योग अब उठने वाला है, ये फार्मा कंपनी का स्टॉक सेल कर देंगे, अरे बाप रे कंपनी का अर्निंग फॉल कर गया है, सो आई शुड नॉट इन्वेस्ट फॉर दैट. ठीक है, इफ यू आर नॉट टेकिंग स्पॉन्टेनियस रिएक्शंस एंड डिसीजंस लाइक दिस एंड पुटिंग you state that ठीक है, let me go slow, देख रहा हूं कहां तक पानी बहता है, That is, you are putting more emphasis on your initial beliefs, like it is a 40-year-old company, this is an existing pharma company जो पहले जिसे काफी सारे अप्रूवल मिले हैं तो ये भी मिल जाएगा, और अभी अर्निंग्स कम हुआ है तो कल ठीक होगा, and you put less emphasis on the new pieces of information, this flaw in decision making, and if this results in a flaw, this is called conservatism bias. So what is conservatism bias? This is a bias where people seek out information and others who confirm their existing views. So वो information को click करता है या वो लोगों के बात को click करता है जो उससे जो विश्वास है, आपको जो विश्वास है उसी बात को दोहराता है. So जो आपको ये करता है, we click to that. They underreact to new information. Their mistake lies in insufficient revision of their beliefs. And we humans have a tendency to weigh and prefer information that is easy to process. Because new information gather करके फिर से tools use करके process करना पड़ेगा, we play safe. ज़्यादा process नहीं करते, slowly change करते, and that is conservatism bias. ये brain के relation में है, brain को ज़्यादा नहीं काम में लगाते हैं, so this is a type of cognitive bias as referred by this A1, first cognitive bias. Another practical situation. You believe that marketing is doing well because market is doing well, but you give the credit to loose monetary policies adopted by the RBI. If you like a company, why? Because say you are an employee of that company. As its employee, you like a company and have a tendency to dismiss negative information as irrelevant or inaccurate. Okay? So if you listen intently to those who agree to your belief, but dismiss anyone who disagree, we say you are exhibiting confirmation bias. So when you seek evidence or interpretation in a way that confirms with your existing belief system, and you discard or disregard those news sources or people who conflict your information, give you conflicting information, you are said to be suffering from confirmation bias. It is basically wishful thinking and close-mindedness which leads to this bias. In this case, the mind acts as a compulsive yes man to whoever who echoes whatever you want to believe. ठीक है, हम लोग एक yes man को चाहते हैं जो मैं जो बताऊंगा उसी के साथ हाँ में हाँ मिलाएगा. ठीक है, सो अगर मैं ऐसे एक शॉर्टकट, ऐसे एक गलती, ठीक है, हाँ से हाँ मिलाने वाला गलती करते जाता हूं, then I am said to be suffering from confirmation bias. This bias occurs when people filter out potentially meaningful facts and opinions that fail to support their preconceived notions. Okay? People gather facts and interpret them to support their fixed conclusion. मतलब जो उनका existing conclusion है, they support, they keep on supporting that by gathering more information on that line only. They stop gathering information when new evidence validates that the views that they want to be true, so उसे validate नहीं करता है. So they stop gathering new information. Now, I'm just speeding up a bit because we do not have much time left. I come to another situation. So till now we have covered two brain-related thinking errors that we make. One is confirmation bias. Another one is conservative bias. Take this practical situation. Say Miss Devyani made an investment in a stock 2 years back on the basis of her friend Mr. Aman's suggestion. Last year, the performance of this stock was extraordinarily good, and she took the credit and attributed the success to her knowledge, skill, and decision making. This year, when the same investment fell, when the price of that stock fell, she puts the blames on some external factor like a government policy, a recessionary weak economy, or other persons like this friend Aman, or a financial advisor, whoever it may be. मैं तो ऐसे बहुत लोगों को जानता हूं जो कुछ अच्छा हो, हाँ ये हमारा काम था, कुछ बुरा हो मुझे बताते ये आपका डिसीजन था. I'm sure all of you face people like this day in day out. This kind, the people who are of this type are said to be suffering or exhibiting a bias called self-serving attribution bias. They serve themselves only. So what is this? This Devyani, Miss Devyani, what mistake she committed? This refers to a person's tendency to attribute positive events and outcomes to personal factors and negative ones to others or external factors. When things go wrong, people look for someone or something to blame. That is called scapegoating. एक बलि का बकरा पकड़ता है और उसे दोष देता है. अगर अच्छा होता है तो क्रेडिट खुद लेता है. This cognitive bias is basically a defense mechanism. जो लोग what I say, the people with the spinal cords don't do something like this. The people without the spinal cords actually do something like this. ठीक है? It may mean evading personal responsibility and leads to persevere in the face of adversity. The positive side of it is ये टिक जाते हैं ये लोग, ये दूसरे के ऊपर दोष ट्रांसफर करके वो टिक जाते हैं. In the face of adversity they persevere. So this is the third cognitive bias. Another practical situation. Say after a sudden crash of the stock market, Mr. Kumar was telling his friend Mr. Pandey that he knew this is going to happen. Or after the subprime crisis in the US, many financial pundits or gurus said, I knew the bubble will burst. ठीक है? मैं तो ऐसे, I am a cricket fan, so when I follow Indian cricket, when say India was bowled down to Australia for 36, someone said, हाँ होना ही था, ऐसे ही टीम है, ठीक है? But again, when India bounced back in Adelaide and won the series, and in Gabba, they said, ये इंडिया टीम अच्छा करेगा, ये भी मुझे मालूम था. So इन लोगों को सब कुछ मालूम होता है, but होने के बाद. So this kind of a mental disease, the error, the mistake which is committed or exhibited is called hindsight bias. होने के बाद ये लोग बताते हैं कि मुझे मालूम था. So what is hindsight bias? It is an inclination to see events as more predictable after they have happened. This is also known as I knew it all along effect. It is a sibling of confirmatory bias. वो जो confirmatory bias था, वो लोग information gather करके confirm करता था, और ये लोग happening होने के बाद they say yes, I knew this will happen. This bias helps individual to save her or his face after a bad decision. So again, ये मैं जो बताऊंगा, जो लोग without spinal cord है, वो लोग इस type of decision, इस type of bias दिखा के, biasness दिखा के दूसरे के ऊपर blame transfer करते हैं या खुद का credit लेते हैं. The effect of this is it inhibits learning because it involves distorting past events. They do not analyze why India won after losing 36 wickets, 10 wickets for just 36 runs. They do not analyze. They do not criticize positively, but comes to the conclusion, and that gets in the way of learning for some people. Now, another practical situation, or some practical. We have seen this in our childhood days. All of us have played Ludo or some other game using the dice. Say in gambling, we find that a gambler throws a dice harder when he or she needs a higher number and slower when we need a lower number. Just recall in our childhood days, we did that. Second, when we decide to buy any lottery ticket, we choose certain numbers as if some numbers will win, in spite of doing loads of numericals and probabilities that everyone has equal chance of being, if this is a fair lottery game, that everyone has fair chance of getting selected. When watching a cricket match involving Team India, say you believe that your actions affect the game. You ask your friends, yahan se mat hatna, main utne wala nahi hu. Even I heard the great Sachin Tendulkar didn't allow Virender Sehwag to move during the World Cup final game which was going on, 2011 World Cup final game. Virender Sehwag in an interview said that. When we are stuck in traffic and if the steering wheel and the horn is in my hand, I keep on blowing the horn. ठीक है? सोचने से कि मेरे horn देने से traffic खुल जाएगा. It will speed up the flow of traffic. Mr. Dalal, a trader in the BSE, believes that he can outperform the market if he is actively engaged. That is, active trading करने से ही उसका फायदा होगा. Here the biases exhibited are something which is called illusion of control. We have an illusion, that is a false idea that we are controlling the situation. What is this? It is the tendency of individuals to overestimate their ability to control events or at least influence the outcomes. We end up thinking that I can control the outcome. Horn मारने से traffic ज़्यादा open हो जाएगा when it is a red signal in the front. It can lead investors to trade more than needed. But जब ये नहीं घटता है, इसका result जो होता है, it causes frustrations. ठीक है? Now we come to the final part of the discussion. The second type of cognitive biases. So the first type of cognitive biases were the belief perseverance biases, which I called with the A. And now we come to the second type of cognitive biases, the information processing biases. So pehle wala cognitive bias was related to the brain. Now this is related to the information processing capability of the brain. That is why cognitive के अंदर ही आ रहा है, brain के related. This is the second category of cognitive bias. In this era of information overload, much of the information received or gathered happens to be irrelevant and ideally should be ignored. The difficult task is in paying attention and considering only the relevant information and filtering out and ignoring and discarding the irrelevant information. This information processing, so when we commit errors or mistakes in decision making with regard to processing of the information, that is called information processing bias, as the name suggests. So there are 8 such biases identified by the experts. Look at the practical situations. Mrs. Bhatia does her shopping from a particular store or a shop, even though she knows that better options are available online. Yeah, some people do that. Mr. Reddy goes to office every day using the same route without exploring the new bypass that has been opened. He drives through the same route in his personal car. Or one Mr. Borua invests in traditional avenues like bank FDs, insurances, etc. as his parents, that is the preceding generation, in spite of being aware of the return prospects of the equity market. Why do they do that? Because jana pehchana cheez hi behtar hai. Something related to conservatism, something related to conformity, these are very closely related. Let me tell you. This bias is called familiarity bias. It is the propensity of an individual, information process karte वक्त क्या करता है? The propensity to base her or his decisions on familiar knowledge or terrain. Investing in what is familiar is not necessarily an investment strategy. हम लोगों को कैसे दिखने को मिलता है? Employees end up over investing in the company, in their company stock through ESOP or employee stock purchase plans. ठीक है? Investors have been shown, researchers have shown investors end up buying stocks of companies whose products they are more confident, which they use. ठीक है? इसका consequence क्या हो जाता है? We end up creating risky, biased portfolios. So familiarity, even if we are familiar with some companies, we should have a very open frame of mind while making our investment decision. So information processing में familiar things should not only be taken into consideration. I quickly come to another practical situation. Say, every morning, one Mr. Jha comes across dear lottery winners photo flashed on regular basis on newspapers. The winning amount of rupees 1 crore influences him. मतलब greedy बन रहा है. One day, while passing a lottery shop in the market, he ends up buying a couple of lottery tickets. होता है ये. DL लॉटरी देखना इतना बड़े करके फ्लैश करते हैं हर जगह पे. Second example, the goods of the bigger and well-known brands are usually displayed on the eye level. I gave this example, and we discussed this as one of the heuristic, the availability heuristic, and over there I told that it leads to a bias called availability bias. So because this dear lottery example was very easily made available in front of Mr. Jha, and he came across them, and when he was passing through the lottery shop, he could not control his greed and end up committing the bias, which is called the availability bias. What is that? In many cases, people take a heuristic approach to estimating the probability of the outcome based on how easily the outcome comes to mind or how easily the outcome becomes available to him mentally. Easily recalled, that is available outcome are often perceived as being more likely than those that are hard to recall. Okay? The fundamental issue is that many people are biased in their memories. We do not go back. Brain के ऊपर ज़्यादा pressure देके information को process नहीं करते. जो सामने available है उसी को process करके we take our decision. That is the second type of information processing bias called the availability bias, arising from the availability heuristic which we discussed earlier. Another practical situation. One Mr. Kapoor is planning to buy an engagement ring for his would-be bride. Now he is thinking, how much should he spend? He inquired about this from his family members, friends, colleagues, peers, etc. And conventional wisdom suggested him to spend around rupees 80,000, keeping his financial background. This resulted in Mr. Kapoor spending 80,000 for the engagement ring, which happened to be more than his 2 months salary. ये क्या मिस्टर कपूर को करना था? Answer is ideally not. He should have kept track of his salary. उसे मन में लाना था. But क्यों कर लिए? Because somebody or many people around him, surrounding him, influencing him, his peers, उनके दिमाग में 80,000 वाला फिगर सेट कर दिया है. That is anchor set कर दिया है. And in this situation, the error, the mistake, or the suboptimal decision which Mr. Kapoor has made is nothing but called anchoring bias. It is an information processing bias in which we use psychological heuristics. That heuristics called anchoring. I'm not going deep into it because I have discussed about anchor. Except that, look at the last two bullets. It is stated that this bias is closely related to conservatism bias. How? Look at the last bullet. In conservatism bias, also people overweigh information, but they overweigh past information. While in anchoring bias also, you give undue weightage, you overweigh some information, but that information happens to be an anchor, which may not be a past information. If it is past information which is taken as an anchor, it is conservatism bias. So if my anchor is Sachin Tendulkar's batting average, who has retired 8 years back, it will be conservatism bias as well as anchoring bias. But if my anchor is Virat Kohli's batting average, it will be not a conservatism bias but an anchoring bias. I hope it is clear to everybody. I come to another practical situation. Say Mr. Nagarjun met with a financial advisor who informed him about two different stocks' performance during one last year. First option he gave is that the value of investment in stock A increased by 50,000 over the course of 1 year, but lost 10,000 of that gain due to year-end market crash. So loss के viewpoint से बता रहे. Second option given was with regard to another stock B, जिसका भी increase was 50,000, but he presented it like this, but it resulted in an ultimate gain of 40,000. So एक में बता रहा है 50,000 बढ़ के लॉस हो रहा है 10,000, दूसरे में बता रहा है 50,000 बढ़ के फिर भी 40,000 आपका प्रॉफिट होगा. Look here, a loss and a gain situation is presented, and the bias which the and if you see, most of the and the research studied report suggested that most of the respondents responded with option A, B, that is option 2, and this happened due to framing bias. So framing bias is the bias which came from the second theme which we discussed of behavioral finance, called framing. So that leads to this bias. We come to few more practical situations. One, Miss Kavita, who got a fresh MBA degree. Sorry, there is a typo. MBA, got her first got appointed in an MNC last year, got her first credit card a few months back. Since then, while making her purchases, she prefers retaining cash and using the credit card more often. So cash na use करके credit card कर रहा है. One Mr. Ahmed, a professional programmer, computer programmer, got a handsome bonus from his employer company and ends up spending good amount of the bonus while not touching the salary portion. I have got a few colleagues, few friends who basically are into private tuitions. They have different mindsets with regard to the money earned, say the 40,000 earned from private tuition and 40,000 earned from their regular salary. ठीक है? So उन लोगों के लिए the private tuition money is easy earned money, so उसका to a big extent बिना हिसाब खर्चा करता है. ठीक है? Whereas इसके लिए the hard earned money के लिए वो लोग क्या करता है, वो लोग उसका खर्चा करने के लिए, रेगुलर सैलरी से खर्चा करने के लिए 10 बार सोचता है, because they have two different baskets for that money. ठीक है? And this propensity to separate money into two logical different accounts, two different mental buckets, is called mental accounting. We keep, this is a common error which is reflected, we keep psychologically we think this money is from this source, that money is from that source. So depending on the source or depending on the intended use, हम लोग खर्चा different तरीके से करते हैं. We do not show the same intensity towards spending that same amount of money, and that leads to something called mental accounting bias. Again, one Mr. Khan made an investment in a mutual fund based on the returns of the fund over the past few years, rather than observing the process by which the outcome has come about. So ये लोग देखता है कि पास्ट कुछ 5 साल से म्यूचुअल फंड अच्छे दे रहे, तो चलो उसमें इन्वेस्ट कर दो. ठीक है. Again, a cricket wala example. I am because of lack of time, I am ignoring this monkey investors wala story. In cricket wala example, you will see we Indians, when Indian team wins, we are overjoyed. Then we don't question why a catch was dropped, why the team was changed. वो सब लेके नहीं सोचते. But when our teams lose, we know what happens to the players. ठीक है? Why? Because we suffer from something called outcome bias, where the tendency is to judge a decision by the final result, ignoring the fact that the result occurred by chance or through a sound decision-making process. So when a positive outcome occurs, the tendency is to judge the entire effort positively, but when an end result turns out to be negative, एक share अच्छा return नहीं दिया, perhaps for reasons unrelated to the process, the sound decision-making process is also criticized. So we must try, as investors, as financial experts, should try to avoid this bias. Another, Mrs. Com is thinking of investing in stock mutual fund. She prefers to again invest in a fund that has performed well in the last 2 years. One Mr. Chetri, a regular investor in mutual fund, say through SIPs, focuses heavily on front-end load, but less on back-end load. What is front-end load? The commission or the cost which has to be incurred while purchasing the SIP or the mutual fund. And back-end is, while redemption, the expense which has to be incurred. Some of us focus heavily on one part of the decision-making and not on the other part. Some of us focus on the immediate past, not on the entire duration of the fund. So we say that this kind of biases which are exhibited are limited attention biases. That is, individuals who need to consider the full 100% picture, vast amount of information and from various dimensions, do not do that. They give limited attention and end up taking the decisions. Okay? And look at the last bullet. Such limited attention may be with respect to either number of objects which are considered for decision making before the decision making, or the time period considered for decision making. And this time period dimension leads us to the final type of bias of today's session, which is called the recency bias. And these two practical situations will give you that idea. Say one Miss Roy, who started investing in stock market after completing her MBA in finance in 2008, abandoned the market after the collapse of the market in 2009. Another Mr. Collins, who got to know from one Mr. Gomes, one of his relatives, that he has earned high returns from his investments made in the capital market in the past 3 years. This tempted Mr. Collins to open a demat trading account and start investing in the market immediately when it was in a bull phase. In this case, both Miss Roy and Mr. Collins are exhibiting something called the recency bias, which comes from the word recent. Here, like that limited attention bias, here the limited attention is given to the time frame. We have a tendency that causes people to overemphasize on recent facts and figures. Individuals recall and emphasize, more importantly, recent events and observations. Okay? So what happened lately is focused more, and we ignore the relevant events which may have happened a bit in older times. Okay? This end up distorting our judgments and affecting our financial decision making, prudent financial decision making. So with this, I would like to conclude by saying that by understanding the different themes of behavioral finance, namely heuristics, framing, and biases, financial market participants may be able to improve economic decision making processes and thus the outcomes. Once the behavioral biases have been identified, they can be moderated or adapted. One of the best ways to prevent the biases from affecting financial decisions is to keep the rational side of our brain as engaged as possible as compared to the automatic aspect, which leads to heuristics. So investing success is ultimately achieved by those who can conquer the daily psychological challenges and maintain a long-term perspective. So with this, I come to the end of my deliberation. Thank you, participants, for being patient listeners. So I stop presenting with this.
Okay, now to all the participants, if you have any query, actually the time is already up. So just a 1-2 questions you may put to Dr. Mukherjee. If you have any question, please.
Abhik sir, I think every investor will suffer from any one of the biases. I mean, no one can say that there is no biases exist in the market. And,
Amitji, it is not only the investors, even the portfolio managers of the mutual funds, even the financial advisors, and we will have sessions like this towards the end where we will see the financial management decisions like dividend decisions, capital restructuring decisions, or say even merger and acquisition decisions, which we teach in our corporate finance or strategic corporate finance courses. Those decisions also get affected. So we can say even CFOs of organizations are also are affected by this. This is something which is like a normal loss in accounting terminology, which I guess all of you will understand.
so do you feel that without biases, market will survive or have their own?
Sir, it is not possible to do away with it. Our effort will be, we should be aware of these things to moderate and adapt to these biases. इससे जितना कम कर पाए, so that we do not fall for the traps. ट्रैप में कम गिरे, ये होगा ही. देखिए, आप जब मार्केट में जाते हो, एडवर्टाइजमेंट्स डू इन्फ्लुएंस यू कैन नॉट डिनाई दैट फैक्ट, ठीक है, बट वो भी आप सोचे समझे, अपना कॉग्निशन यूज करके, कॉग्निटिव डिसीजन अगर ले, that will help you to reduce your suboptimal decisions to a great extent and make you moving towards the optimal decision. So tending towards optimality, we cannot always reach optimality. That is why he said traditional finance is prescriptive, it is normative. वो बता रहा है वो क्या होना चाहिए. That is never 100% possible.
So reaching optimality somewhere require a lot of time in the market, learning the market. Then you're able to adapt. Initially, being a new investor, like suppose me,
exactly, and in
up with
addition to
biases.
financial knowledge, we as financial market participants should have psychological knowledge as well.
Okay, we can allow one more question. If you have any question, please. So can we have, can you assume that you don't have any further question? So then we may conclude this session.
I hope so. Everybody is tired today.
And a lot of participants have requested for, this is to Dr. Mukherjee, they have requested for the PPT slides to be shared to them.
Yeah, I will share it with them. I will share it with the participants, and our recordings will, the recording links will get shared. Okay. Every evening. Before you go to bed, definitely you will get the links for those days sessions.
Okay, let me take the charge for just 2 minutes to wind up. So now I like to acknowledge and appreciate Dr. Avik Kumar Mukherjee for his wonderful deliberation as the resource person in the third session of the first day on the sub-theme Biases in Financial Decision Making, under the broad theme of this FDP entitled Emerging Financial Management and Accounting Techniques. So with this, we have come to the end of the first day of the FDP after successfully completing the inaugural and 3 technical sessions. Dr. Mukherjee deserves the applaud for playing the dual roles, one as the coordinator of the FDP and the other as one of the resource persons. So at the end of the first day, all of you must appreciate that both the roles have been very efficiently and nicely played by Dr. Mukherjee. So before concluding, once again, on behalf of the Department of the University of Burdwan, I would like to extend my profound gratitude to all the dignitaries present in the inaugural session and to the resource persons of the three technical sessions, namely Professor Rama Prasad Banerjee, Dr. Sunil Kumar Gupta, and Dr. Ovik Kumar Mukherjee for making the first day a grand success by their incredible deliberations. Let me now extend my deep gratitude to all the participants across India present in today's sessions and making the day an outstanding feat. I also thank all the faculty members of the Department of Business Administration and the beloved students who have tirelessly put their endeavors so that we can launch a foolproof event. Now, let me hand over the microphone to Dr. Mukherjee for the announcement, if any, regarding tomorrow's sessions. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for doing the honors. Okay, so as Professor Tanmay Dasgupta has said that we are about to close this session today. Tomorrow, our session will start sharp at 10 a.m. And I repeat again that the technical session link, which has been shared with you over your email as well as in the WhatsApp group, will remain the same. The link will be opened 15 minutes before the session. So from 9:45 onwards, interested participants can come and join the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. It was fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. And in the capacity of a coordinator, I must appreciate the patience which you all have shown, and we expect that you all will remain with us for the 5 days, and we will have a connection which will continue not only for this 5 days. This first 5 days will be the plug point, and throughout our life we will be connected in different capacities. So thank you. With these few words, I close this meeting.